Well, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another Friday. Can you believe it? One Friday, okay, already, and the week has flown by. And I hope you've all who are watching and listening today on my LinkedIn profile and also on my YouTube channel at Lee Foster Official. I've had a great week so far. Now, here's a question for you all out there at the moment, and especially if you've done that this week or done this week. Do you rate your feedback to your business, to you individually? Do we look at the feedback to improve our business going forward or our role? You know, if you've done some great service to somebody, are they giving you great feedback? And are you showcasing that with all of your contacts and clients or your connections? But if your company's doing really well, why not shout it from the rooftops? Tell people what you're doing. Now, this week, I've got the great pleasure to welcome along a guest who's been a great connection of mine since last year. She's based in Manchester and she's the managing director of an HR employment company. Now, she has also been supporting many people across the central belt of the UK and further afield. Can you please welcome with me today to talk about our topic of feedback frenzy, the one and only Charlotte Dean of P3 People Management based in Manchester. Charlotte, how are you? And welcome to the Newpreneur cast.
Morning, Lee. Lovely to see you. Lovely to be here on a Friday, and yeah, lovely to be a part of the Entrepreneur Cast.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Charlotte. Really appreciate you investing the time to come along and join me today, really. So we are live on LinkedIn and also live on my YouTube channel today as well. Let's start first of all, right? When you started your business many moons ago, did feedback play a part in what you were thinking when you first set yourself up?
Well, that's a really good question as an opener. Do you know, the only feedback I really was interested in at the time was the person who was acting as my mentor, my father, and so that feedback was critical. The super support, go for it, how I was going to offer, how I was going to work, what it was going to mean for me. So yes, right from the get-go, feedback's been critical. And I suppose I sought feedback from colleagues, friends. You know, am I crazy doing this? Perfectly good paid job to set up on my own. What if it doesn't work? You know, ensuring I've got support around me. So yeah, actually, I hadn't thought about that for a long time. But yes, if I hadn't had the right feedback at that time, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you now.
Yeah. I think, you know, what's really important as well, Charlotte, is that sometimes when we're just starting off in our business, we don't listen to what people are telling us in feedback.
Yeah.
And the majority of the time, people don't act upon the feedback that they're getting. Either it's from that first ever client they got. So when you got your first client as well,
Yeah,
and you did that first piece of business, that paid bit of business for yourself,
yeah.
did you ask that client for feedback for you as well?
That's interesting as well, because not in a planned way. I did because I was super excited about the work we'd done. And I suppose, looking for validation. You know, it was all very new. And I am one of, I admit that I like feedback. I want feedback. I think it's a gift. And it doesn't always have to be, yeah, you're doing great. I love constructive feedback, because if everything's going great, I don't really think we're moving forwards because we're not stretching. But that first piece of work, I loved it. I got a personal letter from the MD, and I framed the check, a picture of the check, because it was my first paid piece of work on my own. That was super. On the other way, or if I'd not asked the feedback and they never used me again, I'd never have known why.
Yeah.
And if I hadn't had the positive feedback, I thought I'd done really well, then I couldn't have built on that. That's a really good question. What was the first? Go on.
No, go on, Charlotte. What are you? Sorry, what are you going to say?
I want to put that back to you. What was the, I suppose, the first piece of feedback you had when you started out on your own?
Yeah, well, mine was when I first decided to launch my own event. That was back in June 2017 when I had, I didn't know what to expect. I kept it to 20 to 30 people. And I asked the majority of the people who came along that day what they enjoyed the most. So I was looking at from that side and what was missing. And it was sort of like they wanted a bit more engagement, and I had things planned to do so. But then also it made me create a membership at the back of it, because I heard people when I was doing a one-on-one accountability, and I was always keen to find out what was working well for you. What did you take away from that? And I still do it now to this day.
Yeah.
What could be improved or included for you going forward? And they told me this in the early days, and that's actually when I started setting up my sort of membership subscription, really, back in 2018. That was the springboard for me to think, okay, that's what I'm going to do now. I'm going to create a membership off the back of it, not just the event, but I'm going to create a membership that includes value.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
nobody's ever really asked me that question before, you see, as well. So, yeah.
It's interesting when you reflect back, isn't it? Because we're so focused on where the here and the now. And that's one of the things that I took from you when we first met, was that whole refresher. When you asked me what you're looking for from networking, it was, not quite done it, been there, got the t-shirt, but I've done a lot of things. Been doing this for 20 years. You forget the small thing different. And the questions like this, our foundations are still solid.
Yeah.
And the word you used there, listen. And it's so interesting. On listening, people say, put your hands up if you're a good listener. I was one of those. Right up there. Now, if you ask my husband if I'm a good listener, yeah. And many of us think we're good, but truly listening means listening without judgment or agenda or the desire to interrupt, or already formulating what I want to say when you're still speaking.
Yeah.
Unless we can do that, we're not truly listening.
Yeah. Do you know, again, it's an interesting fact to look at that, right? The listening skills are important. But sometimes your best responses come back from that. And I think we talk about networking here. I'm always on two sides of the coin with everybody I speak to about networking, right? Everybody thinks they need to find the sale, and they're listening for the sale and the lead, but they're actually forgetting to listen into what people are needing, or they're looking for resources or help for them to grow. And networking is more about accountability and actually having a team around you that you can actually pull in any advice or support or structure. And sometimes you might not need the sales till later on. You just need for people to listen to you and to act upon what they're hearing, or for you to act upon what you can do to help them.
Yes.
And I think that's so really, really powerful.
Yeah, that is super powerful. You're right. And out with networking, I was naive to think I'm looking for sales in this room. And very quickly I realized through the training, through experience, was building relationships with the people in the room. Because from there, at a base level, from there came a bit of, I suppose, a virtual team, because I was on my own. So I started building relationships with accountants, employment lawyers, IT, marketing. Services I needed, but also services that aligned with, we weren't trying to sell to each other. We just started building rapport. And it's from that other connections came. And And I think that's the key point, is looking beyond what might just be right in front of you.
That's another great point there as well, though, Charlotte. We're just chatting about, really talking about this, is that, you know, somebody said to me this week, actually, they went, I've had a really busy few years, and we touched base a few times over the years, but they had stepped away from networking in general for a long time because they had enough business on their books. But what they found was that when they stepped out of the community, so nobody saw them anymore, they weren't visible in there. Now what happens is that some of those clients aren't being retained, they're moving on. So now you need to find where your pipeline's bringing new people in or bringing advice in. So now they need to step back in, and what they're realizing is thinking, well, I stepped out of it and it stopped the tap of the pipeline of resources and people in my team to help me.
Yeah.
So people are very quick to step out of it, but then they think, I need to jump back in 6 months down the line. But here's the other side of the coin. People jump in 6 months down the line, and everybody who's there originally going, oh, you've been missing for the last 6 months. Where have you been? So any business or any opportunity can't be passed to you now because you're not available, you're not around. But then you can jump back. I mean, I've seen people jump in maybe 2 or 3 years down the line and come back again. The word consistency I use quite regularly, but it's also what you've done and what we've talked about is in really galvanizing that confidence and trust in the people that are around you. And that's what we're trying to aim to do. So a good point on that one there as well is we become really busy with everything. They kind of fit anything else in, but they're missing out what actually got them busy in the first place. Do you agree?
I was guilty of that. And when we connected first, it was that whole refresher, bring a couple of members of the team, because I had stepped off. In that sense, I'd thought, well, because this system's in place, and actually you don't realize the impact that every part of your sales marketing strategy, call it what you win, relationship building strategy, everyone has a part to play. And if you take one piece out, it can have a huge impact. And you're right, it's not just turning the tap back on, not back to the beginning, but you do have to start to rebuild.
Yeah.
You haven't been present, you haven't been in people's front of mind. And it's like, who are you? Where have you been? You know, we left the party a few years, months ago, and well, we've got other friends now.
Yeah.
You know,
it's not just that. What you've just mentioned there is top of mind as well, Charlotte. Is actually someone talking to somebody in another environment. They've seen you online, or they've met you online, or they've met you in person. You stick in their mind in there. And I don't think many people reflect upon this quite regularly in this, and especially from their business point of view. Even if when they're just starting off in their business, in that first year of business, that newpreneur, that's my show's called. But when they first start off, they don't think we need to listen to feedback. And it's only maybe a year down the line they're going, now I'll get some feedback of what I've done. But actually in that feedback, there's a little bit of negativity, which is a positive turn, because you can adapt your business to reflect upon working better at it. But I think that's so important. And also any network or group or community that you're part of, it's a team. It's people who trust you. They're around you now. So I'm just going to mention here as well, Charlotte, we've got Tony Gordon. So I always like to give a shout out anybody who jumps online and leaves a bit of a feedback or comment. So, and hence today's feedback frenzy, talking about that. So Tony Gordon is one of our RBC members, also Changing Your Mind Limited, based down in East Kilbride. Tony's put on there, great topic. Reflection is such a powerful tool for all business owners, not just feedback from the others, but asking yourself what you think of what you have done. Love that. Love that. That's powerful, isn't it?
Yeah. I love that as well. Conversation with someone the other day, that if you point at something or somebody, so I'm pointing that way, and there are 3 fingers pointing back at me. And I learned that decades ago, and it stuck with me clearly. And that my go is, before I point the finger, is be what message did I give before I start saying you did that wrong or you misunderstood me? Is what did I do? You know, and that can be in a personal setting. So my husband said the other day, no, you said we were booking this holiday to this place. And it was on the tip of my tongue to say, oh, I said, hang on a minute, somewhere I've given him, somewhere I've actually, maybe I've said, you know, we all do it. So we're too quick, everything now, and therefore we respond now instead of taking a heartbeat is all it takes and a breath to think, hang on a minute, let me just sense check what I did, what I said, how I behaved, what I could do better. And when you're talking about if you're talking about clients in a work setting, I find that if you go to a client, if you feel that something's not been quite right, or you've not delivered a value that you think you should be delivering.
Yeah.
I love I don't think that was my best. I don't think you got the value from me there. Things will happen. Either they'll say, no, it's fantastic. In which case I say, oh, brilliant. Well, which bits were fantastic? And they'll say, why did you think you weren't? I.e., is there more? You know, or they'll say, it wasn't quite what we were looking for. In which case, either way, I get feedback, but I've instigated, but I haven't said, why was I? You know, I've said my feedback about self is there could have been more there. And I do the issue, the challenge, the opportunity, rather than waiting for someone to tell me that I've got spinach in my teeth. I'd rather say, anything there? You know? Tell me now. Don't let me sit in there.
Now and again, you forget to ask even your partner. You get feedback from people in your life and all sorts, and nobody ever tells you unless you ask them. Have I got something stuck in my teeth? And they go, yes, you have for the last hour and a half. You've had something stuck in your teeth. Well, could you not have told us? You never asked us the question. So yeah.
Never asked the question. Likes you and knows you. So someone who doesn't know you is not going to elicit feedback unless you ask them for it.
No. I think what's also good there as well, it's carrying on from what Tony's talking about there online. Thanks again, Tony, for sharing and being involved today as well. I always like to shout out people who get involved and invested into the sort of show every week. It's actually asking somebody, and it's not being negative here. It's asking what didn't work well. What did you not like for me to improve going forward? I want to know.
Yeah.
And when somebody tells you that, it's going, okay, good. And it shows that you've got great listening skills to listen into it. But then you're also conscious that you're looking to adapt it and improve it for the future onwards as well. So you're always looking to try and self-improve you as an individual.
Yeah.
I think that's such a good thing, especially that carries on from where Tony is at the minute.
Yeah.
So, sorry, go on.
Thanks for the comment. For us, key values is being curious. Be curious and understanding. And P3 was founded on that. And I was one of those children. Why? Annoyingly so. And that has stuck with values because I love to know, you know, if I meet a new client and they plastering business, I say, well, how do you get such a smooth wall? Right. I'm not talking about people. I'm talking about their product. But like as smooth as a baby's bottom there, how do you do that? I want to know. I want to understand because that leads on to, well, what are the challenges of getting that? So you have to be really skilled to be able to do that. How long does it take to train to do that? And my barometer is always ask enough questions to the point where the client, prospect, whoever you're talking to, is almost frustrated with you. And I think I've
like that.
almost perfected this over time. Because you can read the body language, super important. And you see they're about, and I say, I know I've asked loads of questions. Do you know how helpful that's been to me understanding you? 9.5 times out of 10, they love it. And I say, well, because if I get you, then I'll be able to deliver what you need. Otherwise, what's the alternative? I make the assumptions that you want what you think you want, and I give you a sticky plaster and you don't get what you need, and I don't deliver value, and the relationship's very short.
Well, it breaks down, Charlotte. It breaks down after a while. It just breaks down. And then you kick yourself afterwards and thinking, if I'd only been more curious and pushed, I call it the squeaky wheel technique.
Yeah, okay. What's that
So
about?
the squeaky wheel is always be asking questions and always be the squeaky wheel. Because if you're the squeaky wheel of the supermarket, it gets seen to, right? So the squeaky wheel always gets seen to, right? And I always say, I said this to my son as
Yeah,
well a fair few years ago, you know, always be the squeaky wheel, always be asking questions, always be noisy about what you're doing in
yeah,
your industry and music, or, you know, things that always be wanting to
yeah,
learn from people around you. And that's what I mean
yeah.
by the squeaky wheel. If you're quiet and out of sight, nobody's ever going to hear from you at all,
No.
and you'll not progress forward and improve. So I love what you've just said there. Sorry, when you start off in your business, anybody's watching this now as a new starter, was that just keep asking people questions. Be the squeaky
Mm.
wheel in your industry or your groups or networks, and just keep not annoying people, but
Mm.
just keeping their peripheral vision and in their top of mind about what you're asking. The curiosity never kills the
Yeah.
cat, by the way, everybody. So
No, not in my experience. That is so true, and it's we're seeking to understand so that we can be understood.
yes,
And also in business, it helps you identify whether you want to work together. Imagine going on a
oh
date, right? Yeah, first date, and sitting there in silence, eating your spaghetti, always a bad move on a first date, and not asking questions. Imagine one person just speaking at the other. I'm doing this, I do this, well, I do this, and this, and I have a such car, well, I live in this house, and I la 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 la.
yeah,
And you walk away going, well, yeah, I'm not seeing him again. Because you wouldn't understand where you connected. And
yeah.
joking aside, is you're building relationships with
Excuse me.
clients, with contacts, with those you network with, and you don't connect because where you
Yeah,
connect, I think for me that therein lies the gem. Because how can I adapt my behavior in order to connect better with you? I don't have to change myself as a person. I just need to
yeah,
deliver a communication the way you want, and that is true in life.
mm,
My family, you know, they all need communicating in a different way. And that's because they're all unique. So
yeah.
if I just communicate in the same way with everyone I meet, it's like scattergun approach.
It's true.
It's like, well, I've spent some time with that husband, some time with that mother, and it's like, well, if they
Yeah,
don't like it, they don't like it. No, yeah, I'm with you. It's about being curious, finding out where I am, and building on those relationships. And that's very much what I learned from you, and in our
yeah.
time
Oh,
together,
thank you.
and the training you do. It's very much about that.
Thank
It's more than people might just assume.
you. Yeah,
Oh, it's just networking.
yeah.
It's really not. So much more than that. And I know all your followers would be giving a thumbs up right now and shouting about that. Is so much more than that. Yeah.
Thank you, Charlotte. Thank you very much for that. I appreciate that. Appreciate that shout out as well. But
You're very welcome.
I've only really got to where I am in the early days is actually listening to what people are telling me. And if I'm not talking to my tribe, my community, my business, my clients, you know, how to evolve it. I've just done something lately as a new project, listening what people needed from the skills and expertise that I've got for the past 30 years, and now reposition that in a place that I can start talking to people in a different light with it, because I've listened to what people have been saying to me. So thank you for that. I do appreciate it. And also, again, I'm going to give another shout out to Tony Gordon here. He's been very active in the chat area, by the way. So I don't know if you see it as well, but Tony's put on there 3 great questions for feedback. Love this. What did I do well? Very good. What did I not do well? And what could I do differently? Love that, Tony. I love that. And you know what? That's also as good with your family members and your first date.
That's so true. And they're such simple questions, aren't they?
Yeah, could you imagine saying that in your first date though? So what did I do well in our date tonight?
Yeah.
What did I not
You
do
didn't
well?
spill your I don't
You
like your
got
joke.
spaghetti all over your shirt, your blouse.
Yeah.
Love
But
that.
it's interesting.
But
It's
what could
interesting
I
that
do differently in the next date?
yeah, exactly. as you say, you've adapted then your business based on feedback. So you've evolving your business and your services and your offerings based on what
Yeah,
people are telling you, for the better good of your clients, your followers, because you're delivering what they need, aren't you? So
yeah,
if
yeah,
you just stuck doing what you were doing, you'd miss out on opportunities, or you'd lose followers because they rely on you to be almost one step ahead, don't they? And listening to them, delivering what it is they're looking
yeah.
for, or creating what they're looking for, I suppose. Yeah, that's so true. Yeah.
Well, you're people management,
Um,
right? So you're in the sort of trenches of people management and behind the scenes, Charlotte. But with
mm,
me, I'm in people sort of industry. I support people in what I do in any multiple industry. But it's the same to
yeah.
yourself though as well. It's sort of like addressing people's, you know, the challenges they're going through, the things they've got in their business, etc. as well, and having that listening skills that you can actually adapt your services and products that really fixes an issue for them. And that's either with a team member or with the company. Agree?
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, it's people at the end of the day. And in most lines of work, we interact with another human being. And don't get me started on human bots. But in essence, with my people management hat on, yes, there are lots of processes. There's the hot topics of engagement and retention, learning and development and career planning, and ensuring
Yeah,
that you build your employer brand so that you're delivering the best you can. You're delivering that through your people.
yeah,
It doesn't take rocket science to think, I don't buy a Ferrari and leave it on the street and not clean it and not check the oil and not maybe cover it up, make sure people don't scratch it on their way past or check its tires. You wouldn't do that, would you, with a
no,
with a very expensive car? But here's the thing, it's just a car and it is expensive, but it's not as expensive as your worst performing employee can be.
yes. Do you know
And
what?
yet we bring people into businesses and we leave them with no computers, not the right equipment, with no encouragement, no understanding of what they need. How do I motivate them? How can I recognize them? How can I develop them?
Yeah,
We recruit them in, we pop them, and that's it. So a lot of our work is about how do we ensure they add value, that they give up their best, that they fulfill their purpose.
yeah.
And it's about spending time with people, so understanding people, how they tick, super important.
There's
What were
another
you going
good
to
point you just mentioned there, Charlotte, right? Sorry, just to dive in here, right?
say?
It's team retention and staff retention, right?
Mm,
I actually had this conversation very recently of going in sales, right? And not listening to the sales people or
mm,
persons in a role that usually they get no training whatsoever. And they literally get put into a role and said to them, excuse here, crack on and get on with it. That's your territory. This is what I'm looking for. You've got the next sort of 3 to 6 months probationary period. And if you don't get it by that 6 months, we might not listen to you, but you might not have a job.
yeah,
And then, this listening to that team member saying, okay, how's your first month been? What's your first week been like? Listening to, again, it's another angle of feedback
yeah,
of listening to your team members around you
yes,
and knowing how to retain them
yeah.
to give them best environment that they can work in and the best tools and support they can get from that as well. That's important, isn't it?
That's super important. And that links to Tony's 3 questions and
Yeah,
how a manager could be asking questions for them. What's going well for you? And have you got everything that you
yeah,
need? What could we do more for you? And that feedback piece to bring this sort of full circle is involving team members. Is look, John's just joined us. He's going to be doing da 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 da. Spend time getting to know. And I'm a very open, transparent person. So I'd be saying to John and his colleagues, so colleagues, how John's settling in and how's he doing? Because we love feedback. And if
yeah.
John can, he's getting
Excuse
it, and when that will help him
me. Yeah,
get from A to B, which is top performer, higher, the performance he needs to deliver. as quickly as we can, so you'll be a high performing team sooner, because it doesn't happen on its own, you know. So if you leave John and not involve the team, they don't think they can give feedback for it. You might feel embarrassed to get it. They don't know how to maybe say something constructively. So it's setting your stall out, isn't it, at the outset of,
Yeah.
this is how we're going to work. And if we don't know, if we're not doing it as well as we could, how can we change it?
But it's what you mentioned before, though, is like, I look at car analogies, right? And you think about the Ferrari, you think about the car that you got to get you from A to B, C to D, and further afield, right? In part of your role, in part of your business, and you want to be out and about and visible, you want to be active, you want to be moving around your territory, for example, right? You would not get an MOT on your car. You wouldn't get a service on your car. You would actually get a service on the car. You would maintain your tires. So you're listening to how the vehicle's working for you to make sure it's in peak performance to get you around. Now, if you don't listen to it or look at it or check on it, it starts to break down.
Yeah.
And that's the way I look at it as well, is that if you're not spending the time in reviewing it, what you needed to do, it's going to make you late for an appointment. It's going to be make you late for the business. It's going to make you late for an event, things like that. It's the same with what you're mentioning there with team members. They'll break down and leave, and then you've got nobody in the team.
So with that analogy, because I use this analogy quite a lot, is and mine's due for its service. It's twice yearly service. And this is quite apt because, okay, I put my car in twice yearly. It has its spring clean and it has its winter prep. Okay. And so in business, 2 should be the minimum times that I sit with a colleague and have formal check-in. So of course you come out your garage, don't you, with your checklist, making sure it's in working order, or they've given you a notification of something that tires might need doing next service, you know. But you look at some review forms, performance review forms, if they exist, they're either super complicated, non-existent, and it's those companies that we work with, they have brilliant ways where the individual feels them thinking, great, I know I'm doing really well, and I'm going to have another check-in in 6 months or 3 months if they do it every quarter. And that's the thing, we're investing in something. And it's not a mechanical vehicle that can be crushed into a yard. It's a human being that can make the difference. Because see, when things go wrong in employment, how much that individual, how much damage they could do to the business. It's like, why do they become super important then? They should have been super important right from the start. And that's the feedback piece.
Starting the stall where you mean to go on, and I guess that's with not just for team members in the company environment, excuse me, bit of a thought, the company environment, but that's also the clients that you're working with, is touching base with them to find out where they are at the minute and having that checklist. You know, it's something I'm actually at the moment looking to reintroduce a bi-monthly check-in for new members and members, so I can hear what's going on. I can address any questions. I can put them in the right direction to the people who are part of my team around me, or part of that sort of membership team. But then also, if there's something that's missing, I can then address it and go, do you know what? I can actually fit that in. And also people can have like 30-minute calls with me and just touch base, or see me when I meet them in face-to-face time. I'm always asking, you know, seeing some great, this working well and that working well. Is there something I can do to make it better for you? And I think there's many companies out there, Charlotte, I feel, that don't do what you just said there, the checklist. They don't check in on them.
No.
And I think they've got a missed opportunity there.
Yeah, Lee, what's your view on, because you'd have one-to-one conversations and check other modes of gathering that feedback, you know, like the traditional survey, or, you know, click a QR code and give your feedback here, and asking for, you know, testimonials on various platforms. What are your views there on using different channels?
I think it's so important. I mean, we've got one at the minute, which is a reputation software system I use with one of my members, Ian Shapiro, and I'll send a QR code to people who've been out to events, and I think it's really key to do that. I think, like, so forms, you've got to have something that works really well for you. You know, there's nothing better for me. Here's the best one. should pick up the phone and speak to somebody.
Yeah.
And talk to them.
Yeah.
I think the thing that we miss out on so much in my view on this, and thank you for asking that question, by the way, is, let me just break it down into one area, is have a phone list, phone somebody up. If they don't answer, leave a voice message. If they do answer, have a chat with them, or book in a 30-minute call with them later on. I think that's one area that we don't utilize as much now in this day and age.
Yeah, very true. Yeah, it's interesting. I think an observation, watchers, don't jump on me for this, but the younger generations, millennials, they are less likely to pick up a phone, in my experience. They're more likely to use another channel.
Yeah.
Other than verbal.
Well,
and you get so much more from a verbal feedback, because you can ask more questions there and then and probe into the issue.
Yeah. I think what's funny is I said this the other day, one of the events in one of the meetings, was that somebody sent me a text message instead of phoning me. And well, I got a text message and then text them back to say, I'm sorry, I can't take the call at the minute, I'm a bit busy. Then I sent a text back, and it was sort of like, then we started in a text message going backwards and forwards. And I thought, you could have picked up the phone and just spoke to us. So I got about 3 or 4 text messages backwards and forwards playing text tennis, right? And it's like, you could have just picked up the phone and spoke to me in this time now. But I think there's this, again, don't jump on me as well, Charlotte, right? Anybody's watching and listening to this now. I think there's this area that people are very handy to use the technology of messaging each other instead of just talking to one another.
Yes. Yeah.
And there's no harm in just picking up the phone, or even doing, we've got this technology now to do a virtual cup of coffee, as I call it. Just book in a Zoom call, get online and speak to each other and see each other as well, if it's too far.
Yeah, I love that. I love that, the human connection. And again, comes back to this, the body language, because you could read into a message that I send you. The words are the same, but the tone you put on it is your tone, not my tone.
Yes.
And, you know, if I'm just asking, say, a client for feedback on our service, you know, yes, we can do the customer survey, and that's great. It's data. It doesn't allow me then to dig in. So I would probably use a bit of both. So get that feedback and then have the conversation and probe. Or as we talked about, how was that, you know, for you? How was that session? How was that workshop? How was that project? You're right, because you can really in it. And I know about your experiences. Quite often when we start being curious, asking questions, people will tell us their initial, like the iceberg, what's on the top. It's only when you really probe in deeper, you know, back to Tony's questions, what did I not do well? They say, oh, nothing really. Okay, nothing really. There must be one thing. There must be one thing I could do differently, you know. In this case, have a better Wi-Fi signal, or it could be, you know, don't walk around you're presenting, because it's like watching a game of tennis. There's something brilliant. What else? And it's amazing. Once you open the floodgates a wee bit, so much comes out, but you wouldn't get that an email or a text or a. So yes, it is super important to really get to the nub of it. Otherwise, you're missing. It's that whole piece. You're missing an opportunity, aren't you? With your clients, with your end users, with your customers, with your family and friends. You know, that we could act on.
I like that as well, because everybody only just looks at the sort of peak of the iceberg. They don't look below the water of actually what's going on there. Just look at the peripheral that's going on and don't delve into those questions. I think that's a good thought to leave this on, actually, Charlotte, on there, I think, if that's possible. I think that's a really good thought on that one there. We could go on for a long, long time, actually, by the way. We could just keep talking. I'll have to invite you to come back again and do it again. I think I'll do a live one. I'll come down to Manchester and we'll sit in one of your offices and we'll do a live podcast directly from your office.
You're very easy to chat to.
Thank you. Charlotte, thank you so much for joining me today. I do sincerely appreciate it. And I think we've had some really good pointers that we came up from today.
Yes, I've got a few action points I'm going to take away.
couple on that one. On that thought, everybody who's been watching and listening today, first of all, I would highly recommend everybody who's watching, and thank you to Tony for jumping in today as well. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. You're more than welcome, Tony. Thank you for putting your feedback on there for us on the chat. I would highly recommend everybody that you reach out to Charlotte through LinkedIn, Charlotte Dean, P3 People Management. Connect on LinkedIn, book in a chat, have a talk with her, because you never know who each of you will know to help each other out. And you could be anywhere in the country, anywhere around the globe that you just want to tap into as well. So I'd highly recommend, if you get the chance, please reach out to Charlotte and have a chat with her. I think that's really important, Charlotte.
Thank you very much. That's very kind. Yes.
You're welcome. Thank you to everybody who's been watching and listening to us today. Don't forget to click the bell, click the subscribe button, and join us on the Newpreneur Cast once a week. If you join the Lee Foster official YouTube channel, I've got different playlists on there. We've got the Newpreneur Cast, and I've got a new one coming out on June the 2nd at 7:30 in the evening as well. But you have to subscribe to the YouTube channel to find out more about that as well. We've got many more guests coming up, many more topics to discover. I've had a few people reach out to me in the last couple of weeks saying, can I be on this Newpreneur Cast and have a chat with you, Lee? So again, any feedback you've got, please direct message me straight away if you don't mind. But stay in tune, stay in contact. Thank you to Charlotte. Thank you from me. Have a great rest of the week, and we'll see you back on the Newpreneur Cast very, very shortly, everybody. Have a great weekend when it arrives.